What's going on, guys? And in this video, I'm going to cover a few things. The first thing is the difference between assets and liabilities and really how to leverage your credit as an asset. Now, one of the things we have to understand is the reason why the wealthy continue to be wealthy and continue to have money or make money in their sleep is because they have assets. And they don't take their earned income or their passive income and invest in liabilities. Now, the question becomes, what's the difference? An asset is anything that you take your money on, but your money that you earned, and you invest that in something that's going to make you money or produce cash flow. So you can have an asset that's a non-cash flow producing asset that's just gonna have equity and you don't have any payments associated, or you can have a cash flow producing asset. Ideally, you'll want to purchase something that's going to produce cash flow and appreciate with equity. But to keep this extremely simple, one of the biggest assets that we have that many people don't even consider is time. And it's so important that we invest our time strategically because we will never ever get time back. Ever. So make sure you're wise with that asset of time. It's finite. All of us only has a certain amount of it in our life, and we don't know when it's going to run out. So use it strategically as a high level thing to consider. Now, the second asset that many of us don't consider is our mindset. Outside of time, the way you think is arguably your number one asset because your ability to obtain information and apply that information is essential. So when it comes to finances, your financial education is an asset. So taking the money that you're earning and investing in your financial education, coupled with investing in your mindset, is a huge asset. Because now you're gonna know how to think and you're gonna know how to operate. So those are some assets that many people just don't consider. And they go out, they get the money and they're trying to get into these particular deals and these transactions, and they end up thinking that that opportunity was an asset, but it ends up being a liability because they didn't know how to think about that particular scenario, right? The third asset, the majority of people, is our ability to earn income. Now, the reason why I said education first, then income after that, was because the more education and information you have, the greater you can think, and the greater you can think, the more type of opportunities that you can attract. So to keep it extremely simple, this is why people go back to school to get designations and degrees, because it's going to increase their income. If they increase their income, they make more money. Now they have more money to spend and do whatever they want to do with. So your ability to earn income is another asset. Now that we've gotten all those assets out the way, some practical assets that most people look at and consider is a home, right? So that's one of those assets that's typically a non-cash flow producing asset if you own the home, but you're gonna have to live somewhere anyways. So if you're living in that home and it's appreciating with equity, although it's not a cash flow producing asset, if you buy the home for $100,000, but you got a deal on the home and it was worth $150,000, well, the difference between what it's valued at and what it's owed is equity. That's positive. That is an asset. It's just not a cash flow producing asset. Now, if you happen to have a property that you own and it's a duplex, and then that property is rented out, now you have an asset that has equity in it and it's producing cash flow for you as well, to keep it extremely simple. But there's so many other type of assets that you can invest in. Another common asset that many people can consider is a retirement account, an investment account, a business, a cash flow producing business. Now, typically, a car is a liability. However, you can turn a liability into an asset if it produces cash flow for you over and above the monthly note payment, right? So I've turned vehicles into assets because they produce cash flow for me. So I think I've spent a lot of time on assets and what assets are. Now, liabilities, mismanaging your time is a huge liability, right? Because you're not maximizing the gift that God and the universe is giving you because you're blowing your time. The other one, obviously, is going to be your mindset. Again, it's a double-edged sword. The way you think and your lack of financial education is liabilities. This is why people go into the league or they win the lottery and they come across large sums of money. And there's people who don't go to the league, but they inherit millions of dollars. And because they don't have the mindset and nobody's really broke down how money really works, that mindset ends up costing them millions because they didn't understand how to navigate. So again, lack of financial education, lack of mindset is a liability, right? And then straight up, when we start getting into liabilities, anything that's not going to produce cash flow or appreciate with time, right? I mean, appreciate over time. So typically, okay, these are huge typicallys. Buying a car is a liability, and buying certain things that's not going to appreciate is a liability. Some would argue that buying a home is a liability because that home, if it's not appreciating in value or producing cash flow for me, technically it's a liability because now I'm responsible for this. But the home is so easy to turn to an asset, right? But there's so many other types of liabilities that we can invest in. The biggest one that many people invest in is minorities, is making our appearance look good on the outside, but internally, from a financial perspective, we don't have assets. We're investing our income in liabilities, and nothing is coming back to us and appreciating over time, right? I don't want to call out certain things because, depending upon the watch that you buy, it could be an asset or a liability. Typically, clothes, high-end clothes, more than likely it's going to be a liability because it's not going to give you any value, but you might be able to resell it on that case. But the point is that all these liabilities are designed to take your money away from you, right? Another liability, obviously, is bad credit. Max out credit cards, those are liabilities. And overly purchasing vehicles that are not producing cash flow for you is a liability. So I get it. I recorded another video for all the entrepreneurs and business owners where I was saying, hey, look, if you're a business owner or entrepreneur, don't buy a car in your personal name, buy it in your company's name, because it's going to do three things: lower your taxes, help you build your business credit, and then protect your personal credit. But if you're not a business owner, you're just out here just buying cars just for the heck of it, you're going to look up in a few years and be like, man, where all my money go? Your money went into these liabilities that weren't appreciated over time. So I can speak to I'm blue in the face about this, but that's really important that you really understand how to set the stage with assets versus liabilities. Now, to keep this extremely simple and not to belabor this point, the way you leverage your credit as an asset is taking the bank's money, TBM we'll refer to it as, and you strategically find investments and plays, as we'll say, that are going to appreciate with time, right? You take the money from the bank and then you strategically invest in things that are gonna make you money, right? I won't even go into a whole litany list of this, but the way you start thinking about credit is access to a pool of cash that I can now deploy at my leisure and make strategic plays that's going to appreciate over time. So the biggest part of this, as I wrap up, is assets minus liabilities equals net worth. So I want to ensure that I have way more assets than liabilities, because if so, those assets, especially if they're cash flow producing assets and things that are going to appreciate over time, not only is it going to give me a paycheck, it's going to increase in value, which is going to increase my net worth. And then those things are going to pay off my liabilities, which is going to increase my net worth over time as well. But if I find myself at a place where I'm over leveraged and I have way more debt than assets, and then to add insult to injury, not only do I have way more debt than assets, but my cash flow isn't sufficient enough to meet the debt obligations, now I'll put myself in a trajectory to where I'm going to end up over time being broke, right? Which is not what we want to do. So that's why cash flow control and managing of money is so important, and then just really understanding the differences between assets and liabilities. So if you want to learn how you can turn your credit into an asset and start understanding how to get your credit to where it needs to be and leveraging the bank's money to acquire assets so you can build wealth and become a net worth millionaire, click the link just below this video, register for my training, the one that's the 95% of people fail to do when it comes to fixing your credit. And I'm gonna show you step by step how you can start this journey yourself.